And look at the proof in the pudding. I mean, we report in great detail at the end of the book how the vice president and her running mate, Tim Walz, are both dumbstruck by what had happened. They felt like they were going to win, honestly, and are just left in shock. I mean, speechless. And I think that they were led to believe that they were on the path to victory.
Hey, how you doing? I'm noticing something on your hand. You guys have a party or something this week? What's going on?
I'm laughing because now henna, or as I grew up calling it, Mendy, is such a trendy and fun party gag thing. But it was Eid this past weekend, so my family is Muslim, and I'm the bad Muslim who doesn't fast in Ramadan. But I married in that sense a good Muslim. He was fasting, and so we had a big gathering at our house. Kids from the neighborhood. So my kids were running around, and we had a henna artist. We had tie dye going on. So yeah, I think I turned my house into a kids carnival the last couple of days. But it was.
So here's a question. Okay, do the kids fast?
Oh no, they're not supposed to. Like, this is very much an adult thing. This is very much an adult thing, and it ties into a bunch of other religious traditions, right? Of that see fasting as a moment of spirituality, of self-reflection.
Repentance.
So each faith has its own version of doing it. The Islamic version is sunrise to sunset, and only for adults, and it's for a month, and it's the month that, according to tradition, the scripture was revealed, and so you're supposed to also study scripture along with this. That said, though, my son, who is a very stubborn person, he's only 8 years old, and decided, he's like, well, daddy fasts, I should too, because we're dudes, we should do that. I'm like, you need to use your brain to study and learn right now. And you need to have all your energy. And we've talked about good energy food and not so great energy foods. So no, you are not going to wake up in the morning, eat Skittles, skip lunch at school, and expect to come home.
Oh, Lord.
Right? Because they're also at the phase where if you don't throw snacks at them every 3 hours, you're going to have a rage monster in your house. So that was my last month, was navigating that.
Absolutely.
So I did, and I talked.
I've been negotiating no candy for breakfast. This has been like the last 2 weeks. I have had to have this conversation
And
3 times a week.
My son knows, again, because he's 8 years old, so he can climb up, he can open all the latches now. And so he will wake up early to find dad's candy stash. And this is all on dad, because dad has a sweet tooth. Like, he knows where your locations are now. Like, I just stop bringing the stuff in the house. So, yeah.
Yeah, this is my daughter. My daughter has a sweet tooth, and she says, like, Daddy, I have mommy's sweet tooth. Do you think she wants it back? I have to tell her that I think mommy has two sweet teeth because she kept one for herself, and she gave me
also,
the other.
I mean, daddy would like to give away his cavities, not give them to his children, which is unfortunately also the
Right.
I'm going to brag on myself here a little bit. Well, I never had a cavity until I was like in my 30s. My first cavity was not until I was in my 30s. Mm-hmm.
I still don't have one.
Oh,
Still don't have one.
dang!
I got you beat.
Never?
Never have I ever had a cavity. But then I found out, right. Then I found out, though, as much pride as I have in this, that it has absolutely nothing to do with me. It is completely genetic. My father never had a cavity until he was like 70.
And this is my husband's sweet tooth.
So there is something.
The bedtime stash of Twizzlers, the bedtime stash of Skittles. His kid learned. The kids watch. They watch everything we do. So part of why I started this.
I know.
I guess it's now a tradition. It's the third year of doing this kind of like open house carnival setup at our house, because growing up, Ramadan and Islam, or just even Eid, were just very personal, to some degree isolating experiences, because people around us in school.
Right, because nobody else was doing it, right?
Nobody else was doing it.
Yeah.
And so I was like, you know what? This is my kid's neighborhood. This is our community. These are the people we live with and grow up around. So we go for Christmas, we'll go for Hanukkah parties. So like we should include the people around us and my kids' friends, so that my kid can be proud of his holiday too. But then, the kids also have a great time. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I love that. Now at our kids' school, I'm not going to name the town that we live in, but at our kids' school, they are closed for Eid. My son had yesterday off because all the schools were closed. So I think, this is the America that I think Trump hates, right? The one where we acknowledge each other's, traditions and give them respect and honor, the fact that someone could believe something different. That doesn't mean anything about me. It's just, hey, congrats for you. I hope you have a good time. Like, I'll see you tomorrow.
I remember that was a big deal when different school districts decided to have, I guess it's a teacher work day is what they call it, but that's an important legal distinction because it's that idea of religious freedom. But if enough students and teachers are going to be missing instruction for a day, it's very disruptive. So it actually works better for a school system to just give the day off, knowing that so many people will be missing for religious observances, and be able to plan around those absences rather than, kind of the ad hoc. But you'll have folks on the right who say, why are you acknowledging or recognizing, these holidays? Like, what are you going to start doing? Giving religious holidays to everybody? There's millions of religions out there. And so that's the legal answer is, if enough students are going to be missing, you're meeting the needs of the local community. And that's why you have the day off. And I'm okay with that answer. I'm fine. I don't need it to be called Eid. It is helpful to, though, have the day off.
Yeah, it is. So here's what's funny. I mean, we have talked about this in other shows, but obviously my name is Jamal. And so one of the things that is one of the funniest things that happens to me in my life is I get into a taxi and I have to pay. And I give the guy like a credit card or something. My name comes up, or I'm at a store or something. And the person realizes that my name is Jamal and they are Muslim. And then they start trying to say to me like, oh, do you know what your name means? Yeah, I do actually. Your name, you have a Muslim name. Like, yes, sir, I understand. Like, then they started wanting to quiz me about it. And like, listen, man, it was the 70s in Detroit. Like, my parents were kind of into, ethnic, they're trying to embrace their African heritage and not be captured by like European symbols. And so anyway, it's funny. I have gone through this my entire life. It is always like a challenge. It's like a challenge.
I get it. I get it a lot. I get it a lot
to educate me about myself.
So they're all, as we know, in New York City, this DC area, it's a little different, but in the New York City area, there's a lot of Indian and Pakistani descent cab drivers. And so they recognize my name and they're like, oh, where are you from? And the family. And yes, I am bilingual, so I'll talk. But often then, if, like say I'm going to meet my husband or something, and they'll be like, like, whoa. These two don't match up. Like, this is not what we were expecting. Because what I have been talking about is, how, yes, we're raising Muslim kids, and yes, Eid Mubarak, and my kids do this and that. But in their brain, they assume that Muslim looks like, either me, myself, or, some South Asian or ethnic, and not just like, yeah, he's a black guy. Right. He's a black guy who is Muslim. And we used to laugh when we were dating that we'd be walking around town and I'm like, people are probably looking at us being like, oh, it's some like Hindu, pagan, maybe chick, or like very spiritual chick. And, just Christian Baptist guy. That's how we usually translate.
Right. Right. They're looking at my joke is it's like like some Lenny Kravitz type look, or maybe it goes to something more South Asian.
The one more thing on that though is you had introduced me to Hassan Jeffries, who is a professor of history, and I found him very knowledgeable and helpful and informative. And he's the brother of
the Ohio State
University. And he is brother of Hakeem Jeffries. And I never did ask him, like, what's the deal? Because you guys aren't Muslim. So why are you Hassan and Hakeem? What's going on here? Same thing. Black power.
Right. Black power. Same thing. We all got it. 70s and 80s were just a time when people were like, you know what? It doesn't matter. I also I have friends who have I have a friend whose name is Steve Lefkowitz, who is a 6'3" dark-skinned black man. And he tells the funniest stories about showing up for job interviews or places when they come out and they're like, Steve Lefkowitz? And he stands up to come in and they're like, huh? They don't quite get it. But his mom married a Jewish guy who adopted him. And so he he has this Jewish last name. And so people are
There are also black Jewish people.
Love America.
There are also black Jewish people.
There are also black Jewish people. Speaking of Lenny Kravitz, close the loop on Lenny Kravitz. Listen, there's some bad stuff happening in the world. I know we're talking about the future. We got a great show today. We're going to talk to our friends Jonathan Allen and Amie Parnes about their book Fight, which you may have seen out. It's like Fight Inside the Wildest Battle for the White House, I think is, yes, there we go. That is the cover. And so we're going to talk to them, but also there's some stuff happening in the world. And the one that I really want to talk to about you, because this has been a recurring theme on our podcast, and I think it just matters, is that apparently the government has now admitted that it has deported someone to El Salvador by mistake.
Yep.
That we now know that there's somebody. I mean, we all thought it. Like, we knew there were these people. Like, maybe it was the hairdresser guy, or maybe it was this other brother of somebody who just liked to have this tattoo, and then now they have admitted that they did actually deport somebody, and now they're saying there's nothing they can do about it.
Well, because they deported him to a country where there's very little judicial recourse, and into one of the worst prisons in the world. And he's actually a Maryland base, so nearby, father of like 3 or 4 kids. And that's right. It's still very, very dismissive, right? The idea that, oh, you have legal status here, but if you looked a certain way, oops, sorry, nothing we can do about it. Sorry, you looked that way. Right. That's the problem. It really was just literally about how he looked was why he got picked up.
And then there was the story about the planes that got turned back because the people on them weren't the right people. And then I think one of them had women on the plane, and they were like, this is a men's prison. We can't accept women. So, like, what are they, like, obviously Signal Gate has happened, and we know they're not taking care of any of these things. This is all super haphazard. But this is why we have due process. This is the whole reason why we have a process for people to get taken before judges. And look, if you want to give somebody who did a bad thing a punishment, I don't think anybody would complain about people being punished who do bad and illegal things. But we got to be sure that it's actually the right person. I don't know. We should be sure.
Part of the way they admitted it, and just how quickly there's no recourse, tells us that it's not about due process for them, number one. It's not about whether or not it's only bad guys and only criminals. It really is about, it's okay to make mistakes on the backs of brown and black people's lives. That's fine. Because that ties into a broader mission. And the broader mission is, we want the country to look and feel a certain way. And if a bunch of people have to, some mistakes happen. If a bunch of people get disappeared or lost in that process, that's okay for them. Because in their vision, they want to get the country to look and feel a certain way, and nothing else matters. And I would say even the democracy due process part doesn't matter. I am getting, I have mixed feelings now about how many Hispanic or Black MAGA supporters are realizing that they were not, because they signed up for the tribe or that crew, that they did not get a special pass. They are still subject to the same stuff that happens to everybody else. And so there's this Black woman on social media who used to literally wear her cape of a Trump flag. She had the MAGA hat and everything. Now she's on social media saying, my son is facing 21 years in prison for something he didn't do. Everyone, please help me. This is racial injustice. Now she's saying that. And she is getting dragged all over social media. I don't want her kid to suffer like everybody else, but I want the adults who are making these decisions to understand what it means when people tell you what they're going to do. They're going to do it also to you. Also, you are also possibly going to be part of, scooped up in this mix of people who are not the right people.
That's right. Take them seriously, because they actually do mean what it is that they're saying. Look, I think what's happening with immigration, what's happened as we think about what's happened as we think about what happened with Signalgate, that's sort of a funny thing. But what it is telling you is that this team really doesn't have they're not taking care of us, right? Which is like or taking care of the information. And as we think about what we do next, it just, how do we build this an alternative here that will matter? I was watching Kevin Griffiths. Kevin he's a communicator. He was at HHS. He worked in healthcare, worked on some of the infectious disease stuff. He just resigned his position in the government as a communicator. I guess he became a kind of a career person over there. And he resigned because he said what RFK Jr. is doing it's actually you're not going to be able to trust the data that comes out of HHS. And he was advocating that we have to start looking for independent data sources to tell us about what's happening with diseases, what's happening with trend lines, because the government may actually not be a trustworthy source to get data under this administration.
You also had the head of FDA's vaccine program also resign. He's like, you want RFK Jr. has come in and said, prove this thing. And that's not how the scientific method works. That's not how science works. But even our most basic scientific method, you come up with a hypothesis about why something's happening, and then you test it.
Right. Is this true? Is the question. Right.
Is this true? And then you look
right.
and then you look at the data and you're like, oh, actually, it's not. Or wait, we found something else. And it's that idea of curiosity, of inquiry, of yes, many studies, many experiments fail. And that's a big tech thing too, is keep failing, because you learn from every failure. That's how you iterate. But they don't want to see that version of science. RFK Jr. is like, prove this thing. Prove that autism is caused by vaccines. And it's not. Like, they haven't been able to prove it. And so the guy resigned. He's like, you want me to put my name and the FDA government symbol on what is misinformation, what is junk. It is not science. And I'm not going to do that. But they'll find people who will. That's the problem. They'll find people who will, and it'll continue to increase this idea of distrust in government and institutions and all of these different systems of how we used to operate. And they already had distrust on their side. That's why they wanted to take over government so they can change it all. And now we're the ones who are sitting here saying, well, I can't trust you. I can't trust the government now.
Yeah, and what that does, it drives everybody continually to their corners. And who does that benefit? To have a society where nobody trusts anything that is supposed to be official, and nobody trusts each other. And then we all just end up, running around being afraid of each other, afraid of the government, all the self-censorship that occurs when people are afraid that somebody's going to, report them, or they're going to get in trouble for something. So, the darkness certainly feels like it is, it's around.
I think, though, the solution to continued distrust is then the people who are trying to share information have to be transparent, because we are still reacting to an era in which doctors, when you go into an office, like, okay, they're like, well, just do this. I don't want to explain it. And we now have a newer generation of doctors where they do help explain and help you understand what's going on. I'm not saying go do your own research, because we literally don't have the tools to be able to do the research on vaccines. Like, I don't have that equipment sitting around my house, right? But the idea of the people who are sharing information, including the government, need to be willing to answer questions and need to be transparent about why, like the logic chain of why they are doing something. I think that's a solution, at least at a micro level, as opposed to news readers or other experts just saying, well, this is what it is to actually help people understand when they have questions, why it is that way. And maybe then we'll get back to this first principles, right? The basic first principles of how and why we are built as a society like this, instead of just assuming everything has to and will continue to be a certain way.
Imagine for a minute, the best version of you, where you look and feel your best self, where your confidence shines through every day. This is how your skincare routine should make you feel. An easy-to-use system giving your skin exactly what it needs so you look and feel your best. Well, imagine no more, because Meaningful Beauty has arrived. Businesswoman, entrepreneur, and supermodel Cindy Crawford founded Meaningful Beauty with world-renowned cosmetic specialist Dr. Sabah to share his age maintenance-focused skincare treatments and formulas. Cindy has been consistently using this breakthrough age maintenance system to protect her skin and prevent premature signs of aging for over 20 years. If there's proof of the power of consistent age maintenance, you only have to look at Cindy. She's not gorgeous for her age, she's just gorgeous. Inside and out, she's a shining example of a never too early, never too late to start an age maintenance practice that meaningfully embraces your age. Nature provides ways to protect us from the environment, and Meaningful Beauty's secret is a unique and powerful antioxidant derived from a genetically rare melon found only in the south of France, a region known for women having beautiful skin. I love the 7-piece deluxe face and neck skincare system featuring featuring effective serums, treatments, and creams formulated to work together to provide exactly what you need to achieve a more radiant, youthful appearance. Personally, I've been really loving the Youth Activating Melon Serum. It smells so delicious, feels incredible, and my skin looks amazing. And I've been getting so many compliments on how my skin has been looking recently. Over 5 million women have used Meaningful Beauty for its innovative formulas that help achieve radiant, younger-looking skin and hair so you can look and feel your best at every age. That gives you confidence to go out and live your life fully, whatever that means to you. Amazingly, after using Meaningful Beauty for 8 weeks, 100% of women said their skin looks vibrant and bright. It's never too late and it's never too early to start taking care of your skin. Try the Meaningful Beauty 7-piece deluxe face and neck skincare system for 60 days. If you're not completely satisfied, just return the bottles, even if empty, and get your money back. And remember, your confidence is beautiful too. Tomorrow's gorgeous starts today. Go to meaningfulbeauty.com/glow to receive 25% off and get the Targeted Treatment Duo gift set for free. Go to meaningfulbeauty.com/glow to receive 25% off and get the Targeted Treatment Duo gift set for free. meaningfulbeauty.com/glow.
Yeah. All right. So I'm hearing we're gonna get our guest joining us in a couple of minutes. Yeah, there's so much going on out in the world. So we just talked about the deportations that are occurring. We talked about this idea of people not being safe. We've been talking about just this idea of trust in general. And I am wondering if at the end of the day, let's say it's a year from now, it's 2 years from now, are we about to have an election in the midterms where people express that they don't want this trust, they don't want distrust, they don't want the division, they don't want this kind of erratic government that we see taking place? Or are people just cowed by it all and afraid to show up and afraid to participate and just feel like none of it matters, and I just want to stay home in my house and eat, Cheerios and watch cartoons?
90 million people didn't show up for the presidential election. How many of those people are realizing, ooh, wait a minute, what just happened here? I thought that they were both equally bad and everything's kind of messed up. I didn't recognize how much of what creates my life and allows me to have the quality of life I have right now has the fingerprints of government on it. Whether it's the safety of my food, the safety of my medicine, the security of my job, any of those things, right? The fact that banks have limits on what they can take from you. They have to actually give you money back. If the bank goes under, you're protected up to $250,000. That didn't happen. That was not part of the Great Depression. Like all of these rules and reasons we have things, I think people are starting to understand that piece. And there is this idea of fight, which happens to be the title of the book. This people want somebody who will fight for them. And the Elon Musk and doginess of everything has really started to translate that into this feeling that something's being done to us, right? Things are happening too fast. There's not much input of it. Something's being done to us, and they want to see people fight back. But that fight that we want to see people right now comes on the heels of this other fight. And I love the title of this book. Amie will tell us as part of the story, I may have had a little tiny influence on whether or not the title of the book was called Fight. But we are joined by Amie Parnes and John Allen, people we actually call friends. This is not just, we're doing random book promo. Like, we actually really like both of these people, and we've learned from them over the years, and we've hung out with them. And so I'm so excited that we get to talk to you both on Pub Day. Congratulations on the book, folks. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Woo. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's good to talk to Democrats who have an open mind. I'll leave it there.
And also Jamal and Nayyera.
Yes, I was like, thank you.
Yes, exactly. So congratulations, on the book. You guys are making the rounds. Where in the world are you today? Are you in New York?
We're in DC. We flipped. We're usually in New York, and then just to kick off our books, but we're in DC right now.
This is what number book that you've written together? Right, cool. Book 4?
Book 4.
Are you still friends?
I mean, it's
yeah, exactly.
we're like
no answer. Okay, we'll take no answer as an answer.
Yep.
Somewhere south of Bob Woodward in terms of book numbers.
So this is my question. So what is the hardest part of writing a book with someone else? It's not like the old days where people had to have two separate typewriters and you're passing pages, back and forth to each other. What's it like doing this now? How's it work?
Should we actually fight it out and show you what's
Yeah. Like
Amie, you should probably take that.
But do you write one chapter at a time and like then pass it back, or do you write like a passage, or you like, how does it work?
Have we're very simpatico at this stage of our working relationship. John and I worked together at Politico. We had a very similar voice coming into our first book. I think in our first book we were just trying to figure out how to do this and how to write a book, and now we kind of gel and we write a lot together, actually, where we'll write things and edit each other in real time.
Like in a Google Doc?
We'll talk about reporting in real time. Yeah, it's really nice.
I feel like we were kind of innovators. Like if you work in shared documents, like in an office these days, and there's like 6 people in the document, like people are just starting to get used to that. But we've been doing that for 10 or 12 years now. We're literally like, I'll write a few sentences, and Amie will start changing the first sentence while I'm writing the fourth one. Vice versa. And sometimes it's just writing notes to each other, kind of in the margins. It's going like, slow this down. Like Amie will typically tell me to slow things down. She'll be like, John, you're racing through this. There's this like wonderful story here. Like, tell the story, show the friction, give me some character. And I'm like, I don't understand what you're saying. Can we just finish this IKEA, toolkit guidebook?
I will say I love the parts of the book that they really do take you. I mean, people say they take you in the room, right? Like there's a scene I was reading about, I guess, the Trump campaign leadership having an internal fight. And so you've got Susie Wiles and Chris LaCivita and Trump sitting at the small table, I guess, in the Trump plane. And then Corey Lewandowski comes in, and I think he's like on his knees sitting there, like, like having this conversation. So he's at the same height with them, but because he's so much smaller than everyone else, he looks like, a little kid next to, I mean, I was there. I was in that plane. I was like sitting at that table. It was awesome. I loved reading it.
Thank you. It's a huge moment.
So it's good.
Story of the Trump campaign too, that you're talking about there, where like Trump has like lost faith a little bit, after Kamala Harris becomes the Democratic nominee and she gets this, sort of burst of energy and boost in the polls, and he's losing confidence, and he sends Corey Lewandowski down to Mar-a-Lago and down to Palm Beach to check in on the campaign. And Corey starts to assert his authority, and he's basically suggesting that Susie Wiles, the campaign manager, and Chris LaCivita, senior advisor, are mismanaging the campaign, which he knows is the way to get Trump angry at them and throw them out, even though it's not true. And so Susie and Chris go to Trump and they say, you got to pick, you got to do something here. And so this scene on the plane, and I don't want to ruin it for everybody, but it's Trump picking, and it's not good for Corey Lewandowski.
Yes. So, all right. So this was my first question for you. You really had to delve into Trump world. It seems like you had some pretty good sourcing, because these stories where you're in the room. So what is it that we need to know about how Trump world works? And do you think how it works in the campaign? And do you think that's still the way the White House works around Donald Trump?
So I think this campaign was better run than the other ones because Susie Wiles is better at managing down, sideways, and up than previous Trump campaign managers have been. I mean, it was much tighter run. The messaging from the campaign itself, not the candidate, but the campaign, was extremely tight. They did things this time around that Trump never would have done before in terms of early voting. I mean, all the things that the campaign could control in terms of everyone below the candidate was under control, and I think was done well. The one thing they can't control for is the candidate who goes out and says whatever he's going to say all the time. And I think her reaction to that was, we'll try to advise him, try to guide him as much as possible. It's not my job, her job, to change his mind about what he thinks, what his political instincts are. So more reacting to what he's doing and trying to build around that and make sure that they are serving him as much as possible. And really the sort of one moral standard, if you will, on the campaign is, if you are doing something, getting out in front of Trump, you're in the wrong. You're doing the wrong thing. If you were making things more complicated for him, if you were talking about issues or topics in a way that is not something that he's driving, you're doing the wrong thing. And so I think that was really helpful. I think the White House is a bigger challenge, and I think we're starting to see some of the tension there, some of the strain of that. I mean, Susie was on the Signal chat, the big Signal Gate chat with Mike Waltz, the National Security Advisor, and pretty much everybody else on the national security team. You would think that that would have been something where she, if nobody else, would have been like, hey guys, why don't we take this conversation to a skiff or take it high side and maybe not drop national security secrets into a commercial app.
Maybe.
So
Maybe the White House chief of staff
and I
might
think
want
managing
to
it
step in and manage people, but hey, just an idea.
that might
It's
be
amateur hour, so
that might be the role there. But I also think that some of the big personalities, I mean, Elon Musk is his own sort of thing, but you're seeing him, I think, being brought back a little bit. You're seeing Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, being brought back a little bit. So I think she waits until somebody oversteps and then reins them in instead of reining them in while they're moving toward overstepping.
You're talking about somebody, right,
Interesting.
who very much it's now built an operation around their personality and their whatever vision. And it's not that's not how things are. Biden White House or the Kamala campaign, even though there was, as you described, so much drama about the shift in candidates, you have a very heavily managed process. You know, the staff are making decisions before the candidate can go and do something. And ultimately, that version of management didn't work, right? Because the voters didn't go for that. What else do you dissect in this book about how leadership, that sense of leadership and what really brings people, whether it's a campaign or voters together to come out? Because you're seeing successive losses for Democrats at this point.
Yeah, and I think what people can do is look at this book and learn some lessons. Jamal and I talk quite a bit sometimes about lessons that Democrats can learn from various playbooks. I think there's a lot to learn here. I think they were using an outdated playbook in a lot of ways, in terms of grassroots, in terms of fundraising, messaging. In 2016, I remember a very wise Democratic consultant told me, strategist told me that Hillary was for everything. A lot of people felt like Kamala was not for anything either, that she was kind of misguided in a lot of ways, wasn't talking about the issues that people cared about. And that's something that the former president came in and dominated her on. And so I think there's a lot to learn here in terms of, what he did right in terms of podcasting, in terms of getting on shows like yours. And she was slow to do that. I think they wanted to do that. And for whatever reason, they were trying to run out the clock in certain ways.
By the way, can I just say we are happy to be on a show like yours because you guys are amazing. Both of you, each of you individually. I don't know you together. I know you separately. Two of the smartest people around politics that I've ever known. And it's so cool that you're doing this show together because you both, as Amie was saying before, independent thinking people.
Yeah.
People who have a passion, people who have a set of beliefs, but are independent thinkers and kind of want that rigor out of other people. And I think, to the point about the leadership in the Democratic Party, there's clearly a gulf between, the leadership of the Democratic Party and where the voters are, and certainly where the voters they need to have are. And I think one of the things you see in this book, and I think people have a natural sense of it anyway, but we do some of the reporting on it, is voters felt at the end that they had been lied to or gaslit or deceived or misled by the political leaders and the other institutions that they trust, including some in the media, about Kamala Harris's standing going into Election Day. But long before that, about Joe Biden's condition or his ability. They felt like they had been deceived about a wide variety of things. And at the end, they look up and they're saying, look, we lost again. And here are all the same people telling us all the same things and selling us the same hope. And here we are again with Donald Trump as president, and which was, I think, the worst outcome
Okay.
for Democrats.
Okay, so people feel that way. So here's my question to you: was the campaign leadership lying to the American people, or were they lying to themselves?
Both. Really, both. I mean, and look at the proof in the pudding. I mean, we report in great detail at the end of the book how the vice president and her running mate, Tim Walz, are both dumbstruck by what had happened. They felt like they were going to win, honestly, and are just left in shock. I mean, speechless. And I think that they were led to believe that they were on the path to victory. And we report that in this book. And I think in many ways, and we have someone who actually says this in the book, that the campaign did gaslight them, that they weren't honest and upfront about what was happening and what they were seeing in their polling, and they were all misled.
Even the people on the campaign were saying our leadership is gaslighting us. Right? I mean, there's lots of happy talk.
That's not a good culture.
That felt not real for long periods of time, and then at the end they look up and it turns out they were right. Their gut was right. It wasn't real.
And that's so much of politics and good grassroots organizing is a gut instinct, right? Like the things that you're hearing around and seeing and touching and feeling in a certain area tells you how that's going to work. When you keep getting told to ignore that gut, and you're like, no, this is not a big issue. No one cares about this wedge issue. Like that's just not, there's not enough voters who are going to turn out against or for that. But it also goes to this idea of, we talked about management, how when your priority is to be right as opposed to helping your candidate and winning. Because if you want to win and help your candidate, you're going to then involve or share what you know and respect them as a leader. So there's some gap in there about actually having respected Kamala Harris's instincts versus these people who were tried and true. We've won so many campaigns, right? Like there's a huge thing that you don't see on the Trump campaign, as you talk about, which is entirely oriented around making Trump happy and, letting him be the best version of himself.
Can I ask you guys a question?
Yes.
Because this sort of goes to, I think,
Sure,
the wedge issues and the gut instincts. When you guys saw the trans ad, the Donald Trump trans ad about Kamala Harris supporting transition surgeries for illegal immigrants in prison in California, did you think to yourself, that's a not very effective ad, that's not going to do very well? By the way, which ended with Kamala Harris is for they, them, President Trump is for you.
So that's actually, I heard that on radio.
Did you guys think this was an effective ad or an ineffective ad? Because the campaign's data told them it was an ineffective ad, and I feel like I didn't have that same impression when I first saw it.
I heard this on the radio, and I remember hearing it, and I laughed because I laughed at the line, Donald Trump, Kamala Harris is for they, them, Donald Trump is for you. I was like, ooh, that's good. That's good. And in day-to-day life, trans identity, gender fluidity, all of this is still challenging for people, even people who want to be open to it. It is a challenging concept and idea. You can say, let medicine make the decision, help families, let families make decisions, right? Make it rooted in families and their concerns, and turn the head about how don't let government be deciding these things. But they lost all of that, right? They lost all of that in that campaign. And so, yes, the only thing that existed in that conversation was the negative, and this idea that this thing that I don't understand out there in the world, that frankly I don't have direct experience with, is what is now the priority for Democrats. That one thing. And and
who was irritated by it, and we report in the book, Bill Clinton is calling up the campaign brass and he's saying, what the hell are you guys doing? This is all I'm hearing about on the road. Which, Jamal, I'm sure you can
No, that's absolutely right. I will tell you the thing that got me about it, because I try to just keep my ear to the ground and hear what the people say, and it was the only ad that anybody brought up to me cold. right? No other ad did anyone ever call me and say, hey, have you heard this ad? Like, what are they talking about? Like, that is what happened to me probably 2 or 3 times. And when that happens, you know it's piercing, because people who don't pay attention to politics don't just randomly start talking about political ads unless they really hit them. You know, they really hit them and they matter. So this gets me to my question, which is, do you think Kamala Harris ever really had a chance?
Yeah, I do.
Do you both agree on that? Do you both? Do you both think that?
Yeah, look, so elections are very close. Our presidential elections are very close. This one was less close than the previous 2, but in historical standards, it's a pretty close election. On October 10th, her campaign's internal polling had her winning 270 electoral votes. So within a month of election day, they've got her winning. And by the way, their last...
But by the skin of your teeth, though. You don't have... That's no room for error,
fair enough,
right?
But before that, they were doing well too, right? So it was never like there was a huge margin. But their last poll had her losing by just like one state, right? Like it was like 266 or something, right? So, but what that tells me is, at least on their side, they believed they had a chance to win. The Trump folks had, largely tracked him a little bit ahead, but at some point it got back to even, with her big sugar high or whatever you want to call it coming,
Sure.
People were excited for her, whatever you want to say. Like she regained the Democratic base and had a shot. And to the point that Donald Trump was considering, messing with his own campaign because the polling started to look bad. So I think there was an opportunity, but I think what really took hold was, and I'd be curious to hear what you guys think about this, but I think that there are 3 main things that you have to do as a candidate in terms of your messaging. And it's tied to your policy, right? Like it's not just your messaging on its own. You have to identify what the public wants. You have to tell them how you're going to give it to them. And you have to explain why you're better suited to do that than your opponent. And I don't think that Kamala Harris got out of the box with that sort of reason for running and why people should want her. And as a result, the vacuum gets filled in of why is she running? Well, she's running because Joe Biden stepped aside and she got the delegates, right? And
yeah, so I'm going to stop you because...
Yeah.
Go ahead, John.
I was just going to say, and then, the next thing that flows from that is...
You're my guest, and I'm going to stop you because that's rude. So go ahead.
the vacuum... No, I was just saying the vacuum gets filled in, and Trump gets to define her, and he defines her as just like Joe Biden, except to the left. And Kamala Harris says, yes, tie me to Joe Biden.
That was where I was going to jump in and say...
I don't want to be anything different than Joe Biden. And by the way, Joe Biden was losing, and he was losing with the same campaign team that Kamala Harris now has. So the idea that she wouldn't be able to distance herself, and I know Joe Biden put a ton of pressure on it because we reported it. He said to her, no daylight. But I think so.
That's amazing.
I think she had a chance to win.
Amazing to me.
I think she had to jump in a much more ready way.
And it is so
that
hard.
That is
to build a new infrastructure, right? American campaign cycles are at this point stupid compared to what happens in other countries. But the reality is, in an American campaign cycle, you're building team, you're building operation a year, 2 years out at least. So for her to jump in as late as she did, you needed the same infrastructure, but not distancing yourself from the person that clearly so many people wanted to not continue to run, including within his own party, to not be the change. Suddenly, Trump is the one who looks like change now, even though the messaging up until that point was, we know what this guy is. We've experienced this already. Why would you want to do this again? We all remember how crazy and awful it was. Why would you give him more power? Suddenly, he's the one who looks like change. And so you lose that idea of, I can be changed, the change that you want to see. And then you do your 3 messaging points. No one's sticking around to hear those 3 messaging points because you lost them at the first part.
Yeah, listen, I think it gets to a core. John started this question talking about what the people want and how do you give it to them. And I think there's a bigger question. That is the way to think about it for legislators, right? For members of Congress and senators. I think people are voting very often with different lenses. You're running, I think, for executive office, mayor, governor, president. you're really running to take care of people's families. You're kind of running as like a national parent. I'm not going to do mommy versus daddy, but you're running as a national parent. You're running as a person who I may not always agree with you, but I know you have my interest at heart. I know you basically are, and you're just better than the other person. Even if I think I don't particularly like you, like Trump, but compared to that other person, I definitely don't like them or don't want them or trust them or have confidence in them. And so I think it's a bigger question. Who are you? Why do you want to be here? Right? What do you want to do with the country? And then we start talking about what the issues are that people care about. Because if I don't fundamentally buy you as a person, I kind of don't really care what your issues are. I think that candidates run into that buzzsaw all
To
the
this
time.
question, and Amie, I'd love to hear your take on this question of 90 million people. Jamal and I talk all the time about how people just, like, it was a fight between the couch and showing up, and the couch won. And what do we learn, whether it's from polling that was missed or, what do we learn about the people who decided not to get into the fight?
They didn't, for whatever reason, like her. They didn't want to support her. They didn't like what she was. I think a lot of it was they just couldn't relate to what she was selling. And I've spoken to some people who stayed home, and I've spoken to people who decided to vote for Trump even though they didn't want to vote for Trump. And I think it came down to that they, for whatever reason, didn't feel like she was speaking their language, that she was speaking another language. And I think Democrats largely sort of miss the boat, and that's why I think you're finding them so lost in the wilderness right now, is because they're trying to find out who they are and what they can sell to people. And Jamal and I talk about this all the time when I'm reporting, but you also have to, you can't just be against something or someone. You have to offer them a different alternative. And I think that she failed to offer that different alternative for whatever reason.
Well, I'm gonna also interject here because there is one part of the book where I will say my name comes up in the book, and so I am going to take I'm going to take the privilege of this being me and Nayyera's show to address the question, because it's written well in your book, but the people outside, the internet, conspiracy people have sort of positioned it like there was some mastermind conspiracy to do a death watch because everybody was worried Joe Biden was going to fall down and die, and that I had come up with this list of names. Although I don't like the death pool roster. I'm going to register that here. I think that's you guys oversold it.
I don't know. It resonates. I'm like, from the outside, I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting. Tell me more. That's an intriguing way to describe this.
But what I was to say is I wrote about this in Kill the Spider on my Substack, that there's going to be, I knew when I joined the White House that there were only two jobs for the vice president: either be show up in the Senate and govern the Senate, or preside over the Senate and break ties, or be alive, be ready in case something happened to the president of the United States. And so what would give Kamala Harris credibility in that moment would be to be sworn in, I thought, by a Republican federal judge, preferably a white male Republican federal judge, because the country was a year away from January 6th, where people had stormed the Capitol, and she wasn't very popular. And so we needed to have some images that would convey, more legitimacy. So anyway, that was the extent of the conspiracy. Was me drumming up a list to carry around of some federal judges. But you guys had a whole bunch of other people doing other things at the DNC and other places that were actually gaming out what happened if Joe Biden got sick or got hurt.
Yeah, and it's made a lot of headlines, as you know. Your part and what the DNC was working on, and we still get questions on that as we're doing this media junket.
Well, my favorite was Jimmy Kimmel worked it into his, you posted it on Instagram. Jimmy Kimmel worked it into his stand-up routine, which is,
did he not basically say that was your job, to be ready?
And you were ready.
That was the job.
You did your job.
What are they paying me for?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
I thought the thing people didn't pay attention to, which is in the same like sort of run of the book, right before it, is actually the much bigger sort of bombshell. Like, you were doing your job. DNC officials started talking in 2023 about how to be prepared for a Biden exit at all the different points of the presidential campaign. Like, what if he drops out after he's won a couple primaries? What if he drops out And when they said dropped out or died,
Right.
you know, or what happens if he wins the nomination and then is no longer able to continue? And so they go through all the different parts of the calendar and like, what are the rules under this scenario, and what would be the result? You know, so they're doing all this contingency planning in 2023, long before that debate in June of 2024. And you know, we talked to somebody who was involved in that planning. They said, look, this is what we had to do with an 80-plus-year-old president. You know, seeking another term, is to be ready for
that's also right. We just don't have that kind of internet visibility into the Reagan generation and what was going on there. So it would be, I don't know if we'd be talking about the Gipper in the same way today if he had, you know, he had the trans.
Absolutely would not be talking about the Gipper in the same way.
With the transparency and just
Yes.
the fever of how we get information now. And just, again, I like the transparency. I think people need to know what's going on with their leaders and leadership, and especially now where they are going to be trying to mess around with government data, government information. It's more transparency, the better, which is why I do appreciate, even though you have often uncovered in your books truths that hurt Democrats. I'm like, well, then the Democrats need to pay attention and learn from the truths that you show them about themselves. So thank you both for the type of journalism that you do.
Thank you.
That the two people have been able to write 4 books together is really, really an impressive feat, but also the fact that you are writing them about moments that Americans are just trying to understand. We're like, what happened? And each book you do gets us closer to like, oh, now I get it. And they're also like gossipy, juicy details in there. So I'm glad, John, that you took Amie's advice of slow it down and give us, you know, put us in the room, because that's what makes the political analysis of it very, very effective.
And I'll just say, I think you guys are able to write 4 books together. I'm surprised every time Nayyera still shows up to do this podcast, because I always think she's going to be through with me. But yet, we're back here again.
No, I don't know. See, our kids are still young, Jamal. I don't know. You and I could do a book. Not yet. We're not there. We're happy we're able to show up at the same time.
You guys have kids together? You guys have kids together?
Easy.
Oh, you meant
easy,
your
Alan.
kids and his kids, not our kids. I get it.
I said our kids are still young.
Now I'm going to start some juicy rumors.
Very funny. All right, guys. Thank you too for being here. I'm really glad you made it to Trailblaze. Nayyera and I are always happy to have a couple people who can
Thank you. And
spice up this place.
I have to give Nayyera some props for her support of Fight from the beginning. So,
is this the first time John's hearing about that we kind of set him up?
It is.
We set you up. I saw Amie at the convention and we were walking and she's like, you know, I can't figure out the title of the book. I really like Fight. I was like, okay, that sounds really good. I like that. She's like, yeah, John's not really feeling it. I was like, let me text him. Like, let me see what he says. I'm just gonna text him. And I was like, yeah. I was like, hey, John, this. He's like, yeah, you think? He's like, yeah, you know, maybe that. I forget what the response was. I probably have it in my text chats. We're like hearing it from somebody else. You're like, oh, maybe.
Just got to get that seed planted. Just water that seed. That's the way.
Political machinations.
All right, folks, make sure you check out the book Fight Inside the Wildest Battle for the White House. And that is truly, yes, that is very accurate. It was the wildest thing we've experienced.